Today's review from Super Mega Giant Disney Villainous.
So this, as it was explained to me, is the base game for Villainous. I would honestly say that's a bit false. You don't technically need to purchase this one in order to play the game. You could purchase any of the smaller packs, such as this, instead of the big giant one, but you can do what you want. So this base game, we'll call it, has 6 different villains that you could play, which is pretty nice from a variety perspective. The smaller packs tend to only have 1, 2, 3 villains that you could play. The only other difference is you could see here there's no place to put your tokens. You would just put your tokens in the middle versus this larger one. You end up putting your tokens in this cool little holder that they provide, which is just a plastic holder that you can put your items in. But otherwise, you technically don't need to purchase this specific villainous one, but it is nice to have and kind of start with 6 villains instead of the smaller packs. Each villainous game has the same main components consisting of villains and heroes that attack those villains. Each board game can work with each other, but they have different villains that you can leverage. Depending on what villains you're most interested in playing, that's probably going to be the villainous game that you end up purchasing. So in different examples, you're going to have different villains that you can use, and then you play heroes against those villains, and each villain has their own goal in order to win the game. So for game setup, it's pretty simple. You're going to pull out the villain that you want, which comes with their own little tokens that you can use. And then from there, you pull out the board and the cards that come with each board. So each villain is going to have their own regular cards. So that's going to have a lot of different special abilities, such as, like in this example, this is Ally, and you're always going to play those on the bottom of the board unless it says something special or unique. And then you also have your fate cards, which always get played on the top of your board, again, unless it says something special or unique. So, in addition, what you're going to always want is your villain guide. And in the villain guide, it tells you what your objective is, how to get the objective, typical tips and tricks to win. And then you're also going to want different action symbols, cheat sheet. And then for each set, it has like an overview of what the objectives are, which can be helpful. So this is a good example setup of how you can mix and match different villains to play against each other. So these 3 villains I have are actually from 3 completely different villainous games. So what you can do is just play them against each other. So in this example, I have Kylo Ren, I have Hades, and Cruella de Vil. So just things to note for when you're playing the game. The actions for what you're going to do are on your board. So what's always really helpful is to look at the action symbols and read from there to determine, what are my options, what can I do when you move. So when you start the game, sorry, I just realized I didn't have Kylo Ren out for his little token. And I'm trying to get him out of the box and he's a little stuck. Here you go, Kylo Ren. There you go. So when you start the game, you're always going to have your character off the board, and then you're going to make your first move, which can be anything that's open. So some characters have locked locations, which are unique to those characters. So as long as you don't have one of those characters or you don't have a lock symbol on your board, you can move wherever. So in this example, I'm going to take Cruella de Vil, and I'm going to move her to, let's say, the second location, and I'm going to read these 4 actions and do what those actions say based on the action symbols. So in this example of where I went, I am going to play a card from my hand. I am going to move an item or an ally. So in the beginning, I haven't played any items or allies, so that might not be applicable. I'm going to pick up 3 different tokens because it has the number 3 on the bottom, and then I have another play a card symbol. So when you start the game, you're going to draw 4 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then these are the cards that you have to play with. The bottom is going to tell you what it is. So in this example, I have a bunch of effect cards. And then it'll also give you if there's any power or what the cost of the card is. So in this example, the cost of these cards are all 1 token. So you would need a token to be able to put it back and play one of these cards. And then you would just do whatever it says. So this one specifically says reveal up to 2 puppy tokens in the supply. So that's probably something unique to Cruella de Vil that is going to be explained in her specific manual. And then if it's something that attacks, it'll also have the power mentioned, so it's really clear. One thing that was confusing in playing the game that kind of took a little bit to understand is your fate cards. So let's say I'm Kylo Ren and I go to somewhere with a fate action. So I'm going to go here to play a fate. Oh, sorry, that's not fate. So Kylo Ren actually doesn't have... Oh, no, it just looks different for the Star Wars deck or Star Wars board. They changed the logo from looking like a little cloud symbol to something a little bit different, but it's still that lightning bolt symbol. So let's say I'm going to go here, I'm going to play a fate. What this means is I'm going to play a fate on someone else. So I'm going to pick 2 cards. I'm going to play on Hades. I'm going to pick 2 cards from Hades' fate deck, and I get to choose which one I think is going to attack him the most. So Phil says, Phil and Hercules get +1 strength if Hercules is in Hades' realm. And Medallion says, when Medallion is played, attach it to a hero. That hero gets 2 strength. So it's making the things that are attacking Hades stronger, because the heroes that play on Hades' deck are going to be strong and trying to attack Hades, like slow him down. So this is actually not a super good draw at the beginning of the game because there's no heroes out, and Phil, or this says if Hercules is in Hades' realm, and Hercules hasn't been played yet. So in this bad example, I can't play either of these, and I would discard them and just set them down. But if I could play something, like as an example, this is a hero, I'm not going to read it, I'm just going to put it down. When you put it down, it covers 2 action spots. So it's important to decide where you want to attack, like the location, essentially. So if I want to prevent them from playing fate cards on me, I might go over here. But if I want to prevent them from picking up 2 tokens and playing a card, then I might go here. So those heroes are going to stay there until you can kill them, and it'll tell you how much you need, in this example, a power of 3, to be able to kill that hero. So eventually, you know, as you get going, you'll have different decks, just to kind of show you, that might look something like this, and then you might have effects out, you might have allies out, and what's unique about the Star Wars deck, there's actually vehicles that can help you, that can hurt you. The Star Wars deck is actually a little bit different from the typical Villainous games. If you guys want me to do a separate review on the Disney Villainous Star Wars board game, let me know in the comments, and I will make that happen. But yeah, otherwise you just, you know, play the game as it goes. There's conditions for some cards as well. So that's the typical setup. Setup itself is pretty quick and easy, in that you just pull out the boards, you pull out the cards, and then you make sure you have your villain guidebook that explains how you're supposed to win the game. So as an overview of Disney Villainous, it can be a pretty hard game to explain, but I wouldn't discount this from being a family game, in that a lot of different age groups could potentially play this, so long as they are patient and taking the time to read their Villainous books and understand what the goal of their specific character is that they're playing. I would also say that it's a bit harder to explain, and overall is good for Disney fans. I really like the artwork. I like the board game aspect of it, where you have this simple board and you can put cards in different areas, and there's different strategies to potentially win the game. You don't have to play it the same way each time. And the variability of it is also nice, where you can play against different villains. It doesn't have to be the same villain each time. You can really change it up, especially if you have different villainous games that you're purchasing. But if I truly had to rate this, I'd probably rate it I would say 3 out of 5, just because it's a little confusing and hard to play. But once you get the hang of it, it is fun. It is nice to play. but just keep in mind it doesn't scale well, so I wouldn't recommend this for large crowds. I would honestly say the biggest pro is that it's great for Disney fans, and even Star Wars, which, Disney just bought Star Wars, so it's really good for Star Wars fans as well. Any Disney fan is going to be pretty impressed with the artwork, with the gameplay, with the types of characters, heroes, villains that you typically see in a game. So I definitely say it's really good for Disney fans. Some cons of Disney Villainous: it's a little bit harder to explain. Not so much the draw four cards and then play the actions on the board and move your person. That itself is pretty easy, but what tends to get people pretty tricked up is that every single villain has different win conditions, different objectives. So you really need to read your own villain, understand your own villain to be able to play it and master it. The other thing that gets people confused is that every board is different. So if, let's say, Kylo Ren moves to the second position here, which is crate, and has these 4 actions that he can do. If Cruella de Vil moves to the second position here, which is countryside, she has 4 completely different actions. So her actions in this spot are going to be very different from what Kylo Ren can do, and same thing from what Hades can do. So you need to understand your own board. You need to understand the symbols, which the cheat sheet does help for that. But I think what gets people really tricked up, honestly, is that every single villain has a different win objective. So you can't just say, oh, everybody needs to get, this power, this token, or they need to get to this location. It's truly going to be different. So that's the other thing that's just a bit harder to explain is if I don't know every single villain off the top of my head, if I haven't played them before, if I don't know them, then I can't explain it to someone that's new. So honestly, typically, what we like to do is just have people read their own booklets at the beginning of the game and then ask if they have questions. That way you're not really responsible for knowing every in and out of whatever villain that they're deciding to play with. Another con that I kind of wish Disney did a little bit different is I wish that each villain had like easy to hard token to be able to play and master. Some villains have completely unique cards that nobody else has. The one that jumps to mind is Ursula. She has contract cards, which are very key to her role and potentially winning the game. And a lot of people get confused, like, what are contract cards? And nobody else has that, so nobody else can explain what that is because they're not playing with that board. So it can get a bit confusing, and if each villain had, this is an easy villain to master, medium, hard, then I can say, if someone hasn't played board games before, let's give them an easier villain, so it's just easier to explain and understand. If someone's super experienced or they've played Villainous many times, let's give them a harder villain to master and win. That way, it just kind of evens out the board, evens out the gameplay a little bit more. Another con, so Disney Villainous, I believe, says that it goes up to 5 people. You guys correct me in the comments if I'm wrong there. However, I wouldn't really recommend this for a lot of people. I have played this with 5 people, I've played this with 6 people, and honestly, it's one of those games that it doesn't scale well. It gets really slow, you're waiting for your turn, you can't really do much of anything, and it takes a long time, it gets boring. So if you're going to play this with a larger group of people, I would recommend have other things that people can, talk about, like have music in the background, food they can munch on while they're waiting for their turn, just because it might get a little bit boring. Honestly, I would say a perfect game is 1 versus 1. I honestly probably wouldn't play this game with more than 4 people unless I really had to, because even with 4 people, it gets pretty slow. So when you talk to people in board game shops, like this is what was explained to me, you can expand it to however many people you want. You could have 8 people playing, you could have 10 people playing. Well, yes, technically that's true. I would argue it doesn't scale well at all. If you guys know of a way that this scales better so you're not super bored while you're waiting for your turn, again, let me know in the comments because I would be interested in really hearing that. Another con that some people might like, but I personally am not the biggest fan of, is that you can definitely team up on people. So this is actually a really good example where you have 3 different board games, 3 different people playing. You could have 2 people teaming up on one and then just attacking, and it's just going to make that one person go crazy that nobody else is attacking each other, and it potentially could be an unbalanced game that way. So just be mindful of that if you're playing. Try to, make it fun for everyone.
Thanks for watching this review on Disney Villainous. Please like and subscribe this video for more content similar to this. The next board game review will be coming shortly.